Amateur Buddhist community in Harrow will speak for us for the next few minutes. If you could give him your attention, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm just going to say something from a Buddhist perspective today. Buddhist texts date to about 300 BCE, and in them 4 ways of action are mentioned among several other lists. Actions that benefit the self and others, weal of self and others, actions that benefit the self but not others, weal of others but not of self, and actions that are to the weal of neither self nor others. Of these, the weal of self and others is the best. The weal of self but not others is second best, because one must have something before it can be shared with others. The weal of others but not self could represent a beneficial sacrifice. But many misguided actions neither benefit the self nor others. But what is meant by self and what is meant by others? Self. There are elaborate accounts about what the self is and what it is not. Whatever it is changing. As for others, that may be more interesting. We are all here in the human realm, but there are many other realms that are possible. The human realm is the start of a succession of fortunate realms. There is also the world of animals, and other realms such as hungry ghosts are also mentioned. Beyond the human realm are various heavens. Some can only really be reached or understood by meditation. When we talk about diversity, we don't normally mean biodiversity, but we should take biodiversity into account, from worms and insects to fish, birds, and mammals. This pluralistic view embraces many other worlds as speculated by science and science fiction. So let's engage in a practice of loving kindness to embrace the whole cosmos by, as it were, reaching to the 6 directions as far as the mind that you can imagine. So we start with the self. May I be well and happy, with the capacity for health, wealth, happiness, and freedom. May all beings to my right be well and happy, with the capacity for health, wealth, happiness, and freedom, as far as you can reach. May all beings behind me be well and happy, with the capacity for health, wealth, happiness, and freedom. May all beings to the left of me be well and happy, with the capacity for health, wealth, happiness, and freedom. May all beings to the front of me be well and happy, with the capacity for health, wealth, happiness, and freedom. May all beings above me be well and happy, with the capacity for health, wealth, happiness, and freedom. May all beings below me be well and happy, with the capacity for health, wealth, happiness, and freedom, extending spatially as far as you can reach. Now return back to yourself. Assimilate this practice into your body and mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajith. And Rajith has said he's not staying for the meeting, so thank you very much. The meeting will start at 7:30. 30. The meeting is not being live streamed. It is being recorded. It's going to be run in accordance with the protocol that was sent to all members and was published on the live stream, published on the website, sorry, with the summons. All members have been given a dongle so that they can get onto the internet. Please leave these when you go. Don't take them with you. Thank you. We're now going to observe 1 minute silence in memory of Paul Goggins, a former member and chair of the council who died recently, and our sympathies go to Paul's family. So a minute silence commencing now. Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody, all councillors and members of the public. Just so everybody's clear who's sitting here at this table, on the far left is Sarah Haythorpe. She's the committee's manager and arranges the meetings and will be taking the minutes. Next to Sarah is James Baldwin. James fulfills one of the mandatory positions on the council. He's the monitoring officer, so he's a senior lawyer, and if any legal advice is needed or advice on council regulation throughout the meeting, James will give that advice. Next to me, to my left, your right, is Joe Wagstaff. Joe is the CEO of Three Rivers District Council. And to my right is Martin Trevitt, who is the current Vice Chair of the Council. And I'm Keith Martin, the current Chair. Thank you. Item number 1 on the agenda is election of the Chair of the Council. This item has been taken as late business. The agreement for the recommendation needed to be secured from the 4 group leaders. It has been secured, and therefore I can take it as late business, as urgent business. My apology. So, first of all, are there any nominations for Chair of the Council?
Yes, I nominate Councillor Keith Martin as the Chair of the Council.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that nomination? Councillor Seaborn.
Thank you. I nominate Councillor Martin. And could I just say, I thought, for those of you, obviously most of us were here last year, that Keith did an unbelievable job, because not only did he have to deal with all of us rabble that other chairmen have had to deal with face to face, he had to do it from where he was. And we could all hear so many occasions when officers were giving him advice at the time, and he was dealing with us, and he was watching hands, and he had well, I guess it was not the most enjoyable year. He didn't have all the benefits of opening fates and going to AGMs and kissing babies, but he had all the other stuff that went with it, and I thought you did a fantastic job, Keith, and I hope this year will be much more enjoyable for you. You certainly deserve a second innings.
Thanks very much. I'm sure the babies benefited from me not kissing them. But is that nomination agreed by general assent? Okay, thank you. I'll now read the declaration of office. I, Keith Martin, having been elected to the office of Chair of Three Rivers District Council, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. And I'll now sign the declaration. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Item number 2 on the agenda, number 3 on the agenda is appointment of the Vice Chair of the Council. Before we appoint a Vice Chair, I wish to thank Martin Trevitt, the current Vice Chair, for being hugely supportive in what was an unusual year, to say the least. Thank you, Martin. Are there any nominations for Vice Chair of the Council?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. And is there a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
I haven't said anyone yet. I've just said yes. I'd like to... You're guessing. I'd like to nominate Councillor Debbie Morris, please. Very capable councillor, and I would ask the council to accept her as Vice Chair. And can I also say how nice it is to be back in person with everyone, even if we are behind screens. And congratulations on being Chair yourself, that you're wearing a nice, shiny gong again. And I'm sure somebody will say you're on mute tonight, but we'll wait and listen.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder for the nomination of Councillor Debbie Morris as Vice Chair?
Chair, I'd like to second Councillor Debbie Morris. She'll be dynamic and diligent and a wonderful ambassador for this council and our residents, as I know you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Debbie's appointment as Vice Chair passed by general agreement? Thank you. Now it's a handing over of the office. Normally I would pass Debbie the chain of office, but I'm not allowed to because of COVID.
I, Debbie Morris, having been elected to the office of Vice Chair of Three Rivers District Council, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability.
If you could now sign the declaration, thank you. And Debbie, would you like to provide the Vice Consul's chair to your husband? Vice Consul's chain to your husband? All of those rehearsals, Debbie. Right, thank you, Debbie. My wife is the consort, but she's a primary school head teacher and has a governors meeting tonight, so she can't be here. Thank you. Item number 5, great pleasure. The scroll of office to Paula Hiscox. Paula was the chair when I was vice chair in 2019-2020, and she was absolutely brilliant. And again, I can't pass this to Paula, but hugely grateful for all that she did and the way she conducted herself when she was chair. So, Paula, thank you. Thank you. Item number 6 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Sarah?
Through you, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Stephen Cox, Councillor Alison Scarth, Councillor Andrew Scarth, Councillor Alex Turner, Councillor Alison Wall and Councillor Sarah Bedford. So there should be, as far as I can calculate, 33 councillors here tonight.
Okay, thank you,
Chair.
And at this point, I'd like to say thank you to the 5 councillors who stood down at the last election. They were Councillors Marilyn Butler, Peter Getcarn, Joy Mann, Michael Reevan and David Sampson. And also to welcome the 5 new councillors, Ruth Clark, Lisa Hudson, Paul Rainbow, Kieran Reid, and the returning David Coltman. So it can't be that bad. David's actually returned. So thank you very much. Item number 7 on the agenda is the election return. And for this, I pass over to Joe.
So I can confirm that all of the councillors have signed their declaration of office.
Thank you. Item number 8 on the agenda is the Three Rivers District Council Health and Safety Policy Statement for 21-22, a snappy title. That was on the council summons. If all members are happy, I will sign it on behalf of the council. Is everybody agreed? Item 9 on the agenda now, the Trolleywood Neighbourhood Plan. Do we have a proposer and a seconder?
I wish to propose that this is adopted. The residents of Trolleywood have expressed their wish to have it, and therefore I think we should support it. Thank you.
And I'd like to second that, please, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions? It appears there are no questions, so we'll move to a vote. Is this passed by general assent? Is item number 9 passed by general assent? That's passed, thank you. Item number 10 on the agenda, recommendations of the Policy and Resources Committee from the 8th of March of this year. Right, there are 6 separate recommendations. We'll go through each one in turn. Each one will require a proposer and a seconder. The proposer can speak for up to 7 minutes and then sum up at the end for 4 minutes. The seconder can speak for up to 4 minutes. Questions can be asked and questions or points made, but each person who asks a question or makes a point can only do so once during the debate. So we'll go through each one. I'll first ask if it can be passed by general assent. If it can't, we'll then go to a vote by hands, showing of hands. So, recommendation 1, do I have a proposer and a seconder?
I wish to propose that we accept this model local councillor code of conduct. It appears to be a better version of the previous document, and I know that all of the existing councillors have been on the training for it and trust that they will all agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelms. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hayward?
I'd like to second this. Also, those of us that have received training on it know that it covers every area. I'm very pleased that the agreement has remained unchanged at £25, and I would encourage all councillors to ensure that they register any gifts they receive from companies within this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Is this passed by general assent? Agreed, thank you. Recommendation 1 has been passed. Now on to recommendation 2. Do we have a proposer and a seconder?
Thanks, Chair. If I'd like to propose that this one is accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. A seconder? Councillor Ranger?
Seconding, I've just got a question. So if that comes after seconding or before, that's up.
Okay. Councillor Bedford? Councillor Matthew Bedford? Matthew, we can't hear you.
Yes, Chairman, I would formally second the motion or the recommendation.
Thank you. I take it the first question then is from Councillor Ranger. Councillor Ranger.
Thank you, Chair. It states in the report that local authorities have an important role to play in delivering national and international climate mitigation targets, which we wholeheartedly agree. We also have the very important task of delivering our local plan, and we want to make sure that all new developments achieve the highest possible standard of sustainability, design and all other things. I just would like to ask the lead member, how does this climate change strategy and the local plan work together? I know we have spoken previously, and it's heartening to see we've got this far, but disappointing that this doesn't talk about our local plan, where it be parking standards, in trying to change those so we have electric charging points for all new homes that are built to a suitable standard. We have people here who are currently in the process of making their neighbourhood plans, so if we are unable to sort a presumption of no 100% hard standard driveway, maybe they will be. We know that many of our residents over the last few months have contacted us because of groundwater flooding or other water-related upsets, and I think that we need to make sure that we, when building, do all that we can to mitigate as much as we can, because there's no point in building, creating more of a problem, and then kicking it to the county council as they are the lead flood authority. I'm also disappointed that if we are looking at air quality, we haven't done anything about no idling zones outside school. It would also be good if we could put some timelines as to when we expect to see things and targets to meet. There's a difference between tomorrow, 2021, and the 31st of December, 2022. And the last point I wanted to make is congratulations to our residents who have done the right thing and done us proud in our recycling targets. But we also need to be a bit clearer to explain to our residents what happens to the products once they are recycled, so that we too are doing all that we can to make sure all our recycling lines are clean and residents, their rubbish is going where they expect it to and not somewhere else.
Thank you, Councillor Ranger. Councillor Paula Hiscox.
Thank you, Chair. I'm so pleased we're finally adopting this plan. Herts County Council have already adopted their plan and have applied for and received grants, including 23.5 million from the public sector to fund some of these necessary changes. Can the lead member tell us how much expense has been budgeted for, how we will be paying for these wonderful new strategies, and how many grants we have applied for so far, so it's not our residents that are paying for all of this? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hiscox. Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Matthew Bedford.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The points that Councillor Ranger makes, clearly she's absolutely right that all of those issues need to be picked up in the local plan, and it is, in fact, in the local plan where those issues are picked up. So without wishing to preempt what I'm going to be saying later when we get to that recommendation, that's where she needs to look to see the proposed policies on those specific issues in terms of future new developments.
Thank you, Councillor Bedford. Councillor Williams, are you summing up?
I can do if there's no one else would like to say anything. To come back on some of the points that have been made by my colleagues across the chamber.
If you sum up and then we'll move to a vote. Thank you.
There's no other questions then, no? Yeah, as Councillor Bedford has said, a lot of that will become apparent when the local plan comes out, so I won't try and preempt what he's said there. The strategy is also being brought out later this year, which is where you'll find a lot more of the timeline that you were asking for and the more important points. This is the strategy, the timeline is coming out, the action plan, where you'll see a lot more of those points coming in. Herts Waste Aware are the... Oh, sorry. Ta-da! Yes, that makes sense. I feel better, actually. Herts Waste Aware are looking after all this stuff that we the recyclables. And if you go onto their website, there's a direct link which shows you where absolutely everything goes, and there's a clear trail of all our soft, hard plastics, papers, cardboards, clothing and everything. So if you go on, that's the Hearts Waste Aware, and you'll be able to pick up the trail from there. As for the grants, yes, numerous grants have been applied for, numerous, and the team have been working very, very hard on that. Would you like a written answer on exactly what, when, where and how?
That would be very welcome. Thank
Lovely.
you.
I look forward to getting that to you, and I thank the team for putting this strategy together. They've all worked very hard and continue to do so, especially in getting the grant funding that you so rightly mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now move to a vote. Is this recommendation passed by general assent? Thank you. Recommendation 2 has been passed. Now on to recommendation 3. Corporate Plan and Financial Service Plans 2021 to 2024. Do I have a proposer?
Yeah, I would like to propose these service plans, and I'd like to move them en bloc. So all of the items under recommendation 3 from P&R, if that's okay.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder?
I formally second, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry?
I formally second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right, Councillor Hiscox.
Can I just be clear? We're moving them as a block. Would that be including the budget monitoring, recommendation 5?
No, I'm suggesting the items under 3.
Okay, sorry, it's not always easy to hear.
I've got
Thank
this
you.
Stupid thing on.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Okay. We'll move to a vote. Is this passed by general assent? Thank you. Recommendation 3 has been passed by general assent. Thank you. Recommendation 4, again a proposer and a seconder. Thank you.
Again, I'd like to propose these and propose again that all of these items in 4, all these service plans are moved en bloc.
Thank you. And Councillor Medhurst, Giles Medhurst, are you seconding?
I formally second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any questions? No questions. Is this passed by general assent? Thank you. Recommendation 4 has been passed by general assent. On to recommendation 5, budget monitoring, month 10, January. A proposer, please.
Yes, Chairman, I move the recommendation as set out in the agenda.
Thank you. And a seconder?
I formally second.
Thank you. And are there any questions? Councillor Hiscox.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question about the budget monitoring. I know that Three Rivers have received 82,174 from the government for reopening our high streets safely, and a further 182,174 as a welcome back to the High Street Fund. And this can be used to boost the look and feel of our high streets by investing in street planting and seating and areas to make high streets welcoming, and to hold events that will boost footfall and encourage people back into the high streets, thereby supporting our local businesses. I couldn't find this money in the budget monitoring. Could I just ask then if it's been spent or where it is, and more importantly, when it is spent, could the ward members be consulted? This was money from the government. It's come through as investing in high streets.
Yes, Chairman, the report and the recommendation covers the period up to the end of January. So I assume that this comes after that period, and it will therefore be reported in a future budget monitoring report.
Thank you very much. That's probably why I couldn't find it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Alex Hayward.
Yes, could I ask for 2 points, actually? First one is, could we have an update on the jigsaw income, please?
Apologies, Chairman. I probably shouldn't have spoken earlier because I assume I should actually have waited and summed up at the end. But the short answer is I'm sure that officers can provide a written answer to that inquiry, and I'm sure you could have asked it directly of officers in any case. But yes, we'll provide a written answer.
Thank you. And my second one, I sometimes wish we should just have officers in the seats opposite us just to give us the answers. But anyway, I just want to point out that when we do get these reports going forward with all that the government is doing in supporting local councils, the 4.6% increase in core spending power that will be available in 21-22, the 1.55 billion for service pressures, the 670 million council tax support, the 762 million to compensate lost tax revenue, and the 220 million to the Community Renewal Fund. And that's also with 621 million towards funding for towns for 21-22. It's just, the dialogue is always how hard it is when I think the government has really stepped up in supporting local councils during this pandemic, and I'd just like to make that point. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we'll move to a vote. Is this passed by general assent? Thank you. No, it's not. Okay, thank you. We will then go for a vote. Those, when you're asked to vote, those in favour of the recommendation 5, please vote yes by raising your hand when asked to. Those against, who wish to vote no, raise your hands then, and those who wish to abstain, raise your hand then. So first of all, those in favour of this recommendation, please raise your hand. Please keep your hand raised so Sarah can count everybody. Those against the recommendation, please raise your hands. And those abstaining, please raise your hands. That's 19 for the recommendation and 14 abstaining. That recommendation has been passed. Recommendation 5 has been passed. Thank you. On to recommendation 6. There are 2 recommendations to be voted on here. The first is an amendment and the second is the substantive recommendation. Councillor Hayward?
Sorry, Chairman, have we moved on to item recommendation 6?
We have indeed.
I have to declare a disposable pecuniary interest in the local plan, and I thought we were discussing process tonight and I would be allowed to take part, but it's best I don't. I've been advised so. Do you want me to leave the room,
yes,
or
please.
am I allowed to sit here and be quiet?
No, could you leave the room, please, and somebody will come and get you when this item has been dealt with. Thank you.
Sorry, just a quick one for the benefit of new members. With this recommendation, will we debate the amendment and substantive separately, or will they be debated at one time?
I believe that the mover wishes to debate them, to present both in one go.
And sorry, again, for the benefit of those of us new, will those be voted upon as well?
They'll be voted on separately. I believe we'll find out in 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Proposer?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not clear. Should I stand or should I not stand in the?
fine, but either way, Matthew.
Okay, all right. Well, if members are happy, then I will stand for this. So I am moving the recommendation from P&R, and I am also moving the amendment to the recommendation, which was published with the council agenda. I think technically I get 7 minutes to move the original recommendation and another 7 minutes to move the amendment, but I don't intend to take all of that time. But however, if members will allow, I will make a substantial speech, simply because this is an issue which is of significance and importance for the whole district. My expectation, and hopefully the chairman is comfortable with this, is that we have one debate at the end of which I would ask to be called to sum up, and we would then have a vote on the amendment, and we would then move straight to a vote on the substantive, either unamended or amended, depending on the outcome of the vote on the amendment. If there is a further debate after the vote on the amendment, I would ask that I'm called to sum up again. Three Rivers is required to produce a local plan to provide a framework for the future physical development and infrastructure of the district. It is obliged to do this in line with guidance from national government. But government ministers have repeatedly made it clear in speeches and in writing that this is our local plan and we should form it to meet our specific local needs and circumstances. Well, good. That's what we want to do. We naturally face some tensions and some opposing objectives in creating a plan. We know we need to build some new homes. Young people need places to live that they can afford. Older people need suitable housing they can downsize to. Key workers should not have to commute for many miles away in order to work locally. So we do not want a plan that simply says no to any new building of any kind anywhere. At the same time, we know how critical our open spaces in Greenbelt are. This has become even more clear over the last 12 to 15 months as people have wanted and needed to be able to get to open areas for leisure, recreation and exercise within easy reach of their homes. So let me address first the main recommendation from the Policy and Resources Committee. A great deal of attention is focused on the specific sites for potential future development that are shown in the documents. And of course that is understandable, and I will come back to that along with the amendment. But the local plan is much more than just a list of sites. It contains some really important policies, and this picks up on the point that Councillor Ranger made earlier, that will impact on all new developments in the district regardless of where they arise. We definitely want and need residents' views on these as well as on the sites. The document sets out a vision for Three Rivers District, and I'm quoting, "Three Rivers will be recognised as a highly desirable, prosperous and outward-looking district where people want and are able to live and work. We will endeavour to protect the character of the area whilst delivering high-quality homes, jobs and infrastructure that will provide access to good services and facilities for all." So we would welcome people's views on that and on the strategic objectives which are also set out in the documents. We also want views on the more detailed policies. For example, and importantly, there are policies on housing type and tenure. Some of the most frequent comments that come up are, we need more affordable rented homes, or we don't just want estates of 4 and 5 bedroom execu homes. Absolutely agreed. And this is the opportunity to support us in shaping those policies to get them in place so that developers in the future have to work within the parameters that we agree and we set. Similarly, we are proposing that new developments should, on the whole, be denser than our traditional housing. That's to say, more houses in a given area. This is intended to make best use of allocated land and minimise, as far as possible, the pressure on yet more Greenbelt sites. This is clearly one of the trade-offs we need to consider. If we want more spacious developments, we will need to allocate more land in total. There are policies about the infrastructure that needs to be provided alongside new developments. and again we would welcome comments on those. Similarly, there are policies in relation to climate change and to biodiversity which are intended to strengthen our position on those topics in future. We are providing for a new policy that requires a buffer zone around public rights of way. So if a path crosses a development site, for example, it cannot then be constrained between back garden fences as a narrow alleyway. We would welcome residents' views and hopefully support on this. Turning then to the more controversial aspect of the consultation, the potential development sites. As we all know, we are required to work with a target for new homes over a 15-year period, calculated according to the government's so-called standard method. This has increased significantly from 180 homes a year to over 600 homes a year, the numbers that we now are being expected to provide within Three Rivers. That is based on out-of-date data. We've talked about this before. The government had the opportunity to work with more recent information, which would have marginally improved the situation for Three Rivers. Unfortunately, the government decided to stick with the old information and last December confirmed that it would impose the higher figure on Three Rivers. Now, as I mentioned right at the beginning, we have been repeatedly assured by government ministers that this figure is a starting point and not a target or a minimum, and that the plan is set by us as a local council. Well, we shall see if they stick by those commitments, or if in due course the government inspector insists that we stick to the standard calculation. The amendment we have moved recognises that if we allocate enough sites to meet the complete target, we will cause serious harm to our existing communities and to the well-being of our residents. Recent announcements from the government seem to have shifted the emphasis away from the calculation being a minimum and started to call it a starting point. And as I say, let us hope that they mean what they say. The specific sites removed, or proposed to be removed in the amendment, are firstly the so-called contingency sites that are not required to meet the government target, and secondly two specific sites which have particular importance for local recreation, containing more than a single path across them, single right-of-way, and which also provide little or no benefit to the existing community. So the balance between the damage from losing a piece of land on the one hand and the potential upside that might come from a development needs to be looked at individually for each site. And that's why we have come to the view that those two should be taken out. This is the first time that the Council is proposing a total number of homes that is lower than the government's standard calculation. If we are still in that position by the time we get to public inquiry, and we're still some way off from that, of course, we will need to justify that to the inspector. I have been urged over the last few days by various people to remove additional sites, and of course I confirm that the list of sites is not fixed and absolutely will be reviewed in light of the responses to the forthcoming consultation. No one wants to develop open fields if we do not need to, and we will be looking for help from the community to support our fight with the government inspector to come up with a reasonable plan. Clearly, if the amendment passes, and as explicitly set out in the amendment, the documentation that has been published so far will need to be updated to reflect the changes brought about by the amendment. As communicated already, and I think all members have been on copy of the emails, there are additional documents that will be published as part of the consultation. Officers will work on the documentation with the aim of starting the consultation with minimal delay. We certainly do not want to delay the start of the consultation into the school holidays. We recognise that we need to make progress with the plan, not least because of the important policy changes that we are proposing as part of it. This is a really important consultation for our residents. Every community in the district will be affected in some way by this. We will be doing everything we can to let everyone know what is happening and how they can comment, including a leaflet to be distributed to all homes in the district. I hope that all members will support the amendment and then support the amended recommendation so that we can begin the next round of public consultation. So I move the original P&R recommendation and I move the amendment as set out on the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bedford. Do we have a seconder?
I'm seconding, but we'll reserve my right to speak.
Are you seconding both the amendment
Yes.
and the... Thank you, Councillor Nelms. Are there any questions? Councillor Stephen King.
Thank you, Chair. It is said that to govern is to choose, but the Liberal Democrats' amendment rather sets that on its head, as they have chosen not to govern. We are very nervous about sending a local plan out to public consultation which does not meet the government's admittedly outrageous high housing targets, which need to be reduced significantly. Has the administration consulted with neighbouring authorities on this amendment, indicating that Three Rivers will not meet its target? And if so, when? How many other neighbouring authorities will not meet their target? Is it all of them?
Thank you. Councillor Bedford, could you sum up all questions at the end? Thank you. Councillor Lisa Hudson.
As a newly elected councillor, please can you explain whether the decisions that... Sorry, I can't read what I'm writing. As a newly elected councillor, please can you explain whether the decisions that have led to the two sites being removed have been made by officers or elected members, and if members, who were involved?
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Shanti Maru.
Thank you, Chair. What was the criteria used to access removal of two sites? Sorry, I think... sorry, let me start. What was the criteria used to access removal of two sites in Coxley and Abbots Langley in the amendment?
I apologise. I'm really struggling with hearing the councillor. I'm sorry.
Shanti, I'm struggling as well.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you. What was the criteria used to access the removal of the two sites in Coxley and Abbots Langley in the amendment?
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Donna Duncan.
Sorry, Chair, I couldn't breathe. Okay, I'm pleased to see that this amendment takes two sites out of the local plan to be put forward for consultation to our residents. But in the interest of democracy, transparency and accountability, why has the criteria to take out these two sites not been applied equally across our sites of significant Greenbelt going to consultation, which would have meant there would be more Greenbelt sites suitable for removal and give protection to our treasured Greenbelt areas?
Thank you. Any more questions? Is that Councillor Coltman? Councillor Coltman, thank you.
I've been told to stand up. Can we be assured that there will be no more changes to sites other than these two sites under delegated powers, and that residents are allowed to be consulted on all other sites?
Thank you. Councillor Hiscox.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm aware that changes have been made that are not covered in this amendment. Were the changes and increases to the Batchworth Golf Club and Maple Cross sites done under delegated powers? When was Green Street and Trolleywood taken out of the local plan? Please maybe be directed to a full schedule of all the amendments which have been made. And Lord Randall from the Colne Valley Regional Park, and we are in the Colne Valley, has written to this council stating, "We are disappointed to discover that your emerging local plan proposes substantial development within the Colne Valley Regional Park and the Greenbelt, including on all 4 sides of Maple Cross. This appears to be at odds with your aims to protect biodiversity, high-quality landscape, and not expose residents to high levels of pollution from the M25. It will also threaten the viability of farming in this area. Why is this council not a member of the Colne Valley Regional Park and working with the experience and power of the Colne Valley Regional Park to protect our green belt sites?" Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hiscox. Councillor Kieran Reid.
Thank you. I'm going to try and use as much of my time as possible just because we've changed the agenda ever so slightly to what I was expecting. The first thing I'd like to ask is, why was this published after the election? Ultimately, earlier this month, our residents went to the ballot box and had the opportunity to decide who they would trust to protect the Greenbelt. Wouldn't this plan, in its draft consultation stage being published before the election, allowed our residents to decide who they believe could protect the Greenbelt, rather than waiting until after the election and hoping that in 11 months' time they may have forgotten the 1,500 homes planned on being built in Maple Cross? Furthermore, I've got 2 quick points. It was mentioned that the officers will release a list of documentation. Will those include attachments to the Stage 2 Greenbelt assessment to show us what quality a Greenbelt is being built on? Ultimately, a key local issue for parish councils to be able to engage with the consultation alongside the sustainability appraisal, because it is questionable to me how on earth we can expect to have a public consultation when we don't know as the public what criteria these sites have been judged on, and therefore cannot give advice on whether they meet that criteria or not. And the final point I'd like to make, and question I'd like to ask, is based on the speech we heard during the proposal. It was mentioned that a leaflet will be distributed. Who will be writing this leaflet? Who will ultimately approve what is put in this? And how can we assure that this will not be used either as a political weapon by the administration against opposition parties, or as a way of trying to influence the public into believing one position on individual sites, rather than letting them read the documentation themselves and having their own say without our taxpayer money going towards political campaigns? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Raw.
Chair, I'm concerned. You're including community assets owned by TRDC and the local plan. This council should be protecting community assets for our residents. This is not an action of a responsible council, and it is not acceptable to our residents. As ward councillor for Brickmansworth, I am concerned that the library in Brickmansworth is included, a library that has served the residents during the pandemic. The council noted the effect of the pandemic and the need for accessible local spaces. The pandemic has also highlighted the need for accessible local spaces, community assets, high streets, and inclusive community facilities, meeting places and circulation. What else has changed due to the pandemic? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ranger.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I ask the questions, I would take a written answer, but I would like somebody, Councillor Bedford or whoever, to please show me the policies for the questions I asked at the climate strategy part, because I don't seem to see them. The honest truth is that we are between a rock and a hard place. This plan needs to be agreed. We want the public to have their say. We want the public to input. This administration has failed to deliver on housing, failed to review as required, and we have been subject to ongoing delays. We've seen adjustments to the scheme that were not agreed by the working group, and we are all as surprised as residents. And now we find that we are cherry-picking some sites too. We are omitting the contingency sites which are not required to achieve target numbers, and we are omitting sites CFS 21 and CFS 26A, which could cause particular harm to existing communities and residents' quality of life without providing compensating benefits to the community. Every ward councillor could probably feel that they could argue this rationale for the sites in their ward, and argue for the same facts that you have applied for Abbots Langley and Croxley. But we need to make a decision tonight, and we need to get this plan before residents for them to be a part of the decision-making process. This is not our decision. We are here as elected representatives. It is a community endeavour. It is our joint legacy with our residents for the next generation, the generation after that, and our residents deserve a say, albeit belatedly now. The amendments that you have proposed are, in fact, cherry-picking, changing housing targets, and not keeping everybody informed. We have seen the letter that Councillor Nownes, Leader of the Council, has received from the Right Honourable Christopher Pincher MP, Minister of State for Housing, which states, "It is important to understand that the standard methodology is the only starting point in the process of planning for new homes. Local authorities will still need to consider the constraints, including Greenbelt, they face locally, to assess how many homes can be delivered in their area. As we set out in our manifesto, we will continue to protect and enhance the Greenbelt policy in this area, and it remains unaffected by recent changes. Policy on Greenbelt will remain a local decision for local authorities." I would like to propose an amendment to your amendment, that we have, number one, no more further delegated powers. We publish the plan as it is tonight, and then we agree to the 2 sites being withdrawn. Number two, in order to address the constraints, to include a sustainability statement and a framework so that residents can fairly measure each site and one site against another. And 3, to include a Greenbelt review document so that classification for each site can be understood. We want to be transparent. We want our residents to be a part of this process. And with this further amendment and these inclusions, we can deliver a plan that offers residents transparency, openness, and a chance for them to have their say on all our future.
Thank you.
Second that amendment. I'd like to second that amendment, Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Chair, if I may.
Well, no, we need it in writing.
Right. Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, if I may, I think I've heard a few inaccuracies this evening. Maybe some of the councillors across the hall weren't at previous meetings where it was confirmed that the library would remain, and if it was to be put in the local plan, then the buildings would be above it. There we are. You also look at the Green Street. I've never seen it in the local plan, have you? Is it? I've got it on screen now. I can't see it there. I don't know where that information has come from. I think someone also mentioned 1,500 houses in Maple Cross. If you look a bit closer, it's nearer 2,000. It's over 1,900. Councillor Bedford mentioned that he was being lobbied to get these housing numbers that are more added to it. It's me and my colleagues that represent these wards that are lobbying him to get them taken off. And we will continue to do so, because I look at this map now and I see Sarah is barely touched. Trolleywood North is barely touched. It's our wards. The ones sitting over here, we've got to live with this. We have. I don't recognise Leavesden or Abbots Langley from when I was a boy. They've had so much building going on over there. And they say it's about time the south of the district took some. Well, we're going to have to take some. But I still say, and I will still lobby you, to get some more off this number. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Are there any more speakers? Councillor Giles Medhurst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of what's been said by some members actually was discussed in some considerable detail, particularly the Greenbelt impacts in the local plan. And indeed, one of the reasons the plan was delayed coming forward was to actually get a review of all the Greenbelt standards and to look again at the Greenbelt impact. And those members of the opposition who sat on the local plan working party agreed to that and agreed to look at those impacts, which is why some of these sites were changed around in terms of what we have before us. But I want to speak as a member for Leavesden Ward. Leaves and Ward has changed out of all recognition over the last 25 years. There's very little of it that was not available as a development, and most of it has been developed. Indeed, 2 sites in the previous local plan this authority objected to were then put forward by developers and overruled at a public inquiry and have been already completed and built upon. And even despite that, 2 other sites are in this local plan. I have to accept, unfortunately, they are likely to be built on because they're adjacent to those 2 very sites that were taken out previously. But actually, it is not just in terms of protecting the Greenbelt. 72% of Three Rivers is Greenbelt. Yes, we can build as many homes and as many facilities on the brownfield site. It gets nowhere near the government target. That is the problem. And therefore, where else do we build? It is all very well MPs saying, protect the green belt, if they're not prepared to stand up in Parliament and say, actually, we don't want that development in our green belt. All of the MPs actually had the opportunity of objecting to what is now known as the muted outer rhythm, which would have reduced the housing numbers for Hertfordshire in 9 out of the 10 district councils. The only one that you would not have reduced the figures for was St Albans. But instead, our MPs, indeed my MP, actually boasted that he supported the objections to that algorithm, even though it would have reduced the housing numbers for this authority and the neighbouring authority that he represents. Now, actually, if we're going to get this right, we need our MPs on board, as well as our residents, in objecting to these, quite frankly, ridiculous housing figures. Yes, we do need some more new housing. We need affordable housing for our residents so that they don't have to move north, although given what is in today's Times, it seems the homes will all be in the south and none will be in the north. 400,000, not 300,000 now, is being suggested, and thankfully the Times, paper I do take, I have to say, although some of my colleagues perhaps would chill me afterwards for taking a Murdoch newspaper, but actually has come out against these particular figures. Now, what we're looking at here is a public consultation, a Regulation 18 consultation, as it's known. So the responses from the public will come back. This council will have to consider those responses and take on board the comments in terms of sustainability, location. Many of the sites, indeed my colleague Councillor Phil Williams will indicated he will no doubt be arguing for some changes as a result of that consultation. I'm sure some others of us will. But unless the government changes the criteria, we're going to be faced going to what is known as a Regulation 19, and thus a public inquiry subsequently, and actually having to defend a lower figure than what the government now expects, which now appears to be a benchmark, and if the 400,000 is the figure, then we can suggest even a higher figure for Three Rivers is likely. The fight starts now in terms of actually telling the public, these are all the sites, these are all the criteria that's been set by the government, this is what we've had to look at.
Sorry, Stephen, that's 4 minutes.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear you, Chairman. I didn't hear what you said.
Sorry, so that's 4 minutes, Stephen.
Yeah, how long do I have? 30 seconds. I should have had a warning. I would have expected a warning, Mr. Chairman. I feel
suitably told off, Stephen.
Sorry. I will finish in that case, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, you cut across me there without no warning. That's not normally the way I normally operate. But in terms of this, let's hear what the public say, and let's come back and defend these. But at the end of the day, I hope the members opposite will try and persuade their MPs that the figures are wrong for Three Rivers and some of these sites do not have to go forward as a result.
Just to clarify for all members, if I'm very, very naughty and I forget to give somebody a warning, it's too bad. It's my mistake, but you're stopping speaking from now on. Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak? Councillor Nelms.
Thank you. I'd like to formally second both the proposed amendments to the recommendation and then the recommendation as amended. We have sought, as we're required to do, to positively look to create a local plan to meet the figures that were given to us by the government. We have genuinely and purposefully sought to do this, taking into account the limitations of the sites available to us, the fact that only 20% of those numbers could possibly be achieved without going into the Greenbelt. So to talk about protecting of the Greenbelt, but you've got to put 80% of your housing target in it, is a bit of a tricky one. Unless we go for tower blocks everywhere, how do we do that? But we have nevertheless positively, as we're required to do, looked to do it. But with the changes that have taken place during the course of this process, a lot of it to do with the pandemic, a lot of it to do with the way people have used the land, we do not feel in good conscience that we would wish to put those sites in. We require good housing. We require housing that my child can get to live in without having to move to God knows where. We do need more housing. We need more than just what we could build necessarily on the brownfield and in town centres. But there has to be some sort of sense in this. We can't put huge swathes of housing where we're ruining the land that is used by the communities there. Unless we'd be better off building something large where we could actually put all the infrastructure in, maybe. Who knows? But I would urge people to approve this, both the amendment and the recommendation as amended, because we do want to hear from the public. This is not our plan. This is possible sites for consultation, not our proposal of what sites should be put forward. It is our proposal for what policies should be put forward. We want to hear the residents' plans so that we can then work on it to try and get the best for all of our residents, the housing we need, of the type we need, in sensible places, sustainable places. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more speakers? You've already spoken, I'm sorry, you can only speak once. We've got your amendment, Rena. You've spoken once. Okay. First, Councillor Bedford, do you accept Councillor Ranger's amendment?
No, Chairman, I don't. And I...
My apologies. Sorry, I didn't see that Councillor Michaels has his hand up. My apology.
Thank you. Are you okay if I go, Chair?
Yep.
It's a little bit tricky with the amendment because it wasn't circulated prior, and I don't know if there's any more constructive way that we can actually understand exactly what the amendment is so it can be considered.
Chairman, if it would help, I think the amendment actually accepted our amendment and then also proposed to include the Stage 2 Greenbelt assessment and the what was the other one? The sustainability assessment. Is that...
And to stop any more delegated powers to being used to change things.
Okay. Well, Chairman, if it helps, if members refer to the local plan preferred policy options document that was published as part of the agenda, on page 8 of that document, I'm sorry, I'm going to sit down. On page 8 of that document, there's a list of additional documentation that is shown on page 8, and that includes both of those two specific documents. Those documents will be, and it's already therefore part of the original P&R recommendation actually, so we don't need to have any further amendments. It's already clearly as part of the original recommendation that those documents will be published as part of the consultation. So I hope that point is already covered. And apologies, what was the other point?
It was just to remove delegated...
Yeah, Chairman, there have been no changes made under delegated powers. It's quite simple, and I'm slightly constrained because the previous meetings of the subcommittee are all part 2, and I believe that the discussions are also part 2. But it's in fact quite clear that no changes have been made by delegated powers. Everything has been through the subcommittee and has then subsequently been through P&R, and the papers that we have before us today have all been through P&R, with the sole exception of the amendment which was published over a week ago on the council agenda. So it's simply not correct to say that there have been any delegated changes. No decisions have been made, and I'm sorry, I seem to have now moved on to my summing up.
Because
So
it's in
are
your
you summing up?
amended
I should perhaps, I mean, if you're happy, are you happy that I now sum up and we then go straight to a vote?
Just to be clear, Councillor Bedford, it's in your amended amendment. It says delegated powers. It's the last word, sorry, now that I've got three things open, is to have delegated authority, and we would like that removed. If you look at your amendment, which if this ever opens, that's having a great...
Right,
this council therefore resolves, and it's not item 4, the last thing that's on your...
right, apologies. Okay, so sorry.
Councillor Bedford, can you just be clear whether or not you're accepting that Councillor Ranger's amendments or not?
No, I'm not.
Right, okay, right, thank you. That's been dealt with. Thank you. Please sum up.
Okay, well, as I say, I'd already made a number of the points, which is that the documents that people have referred to are going to be made available, and that is part of the original recommendation. The delegated agreement that is in the amendment, it specifically relates only to the changes necessary as a result of passing the amendment. So it clearly remains within the powers of this meeting tonight to agree that there is no delegation of any further changes other than the ones that relate to changes flowing from that amendment. The library's already been mentioned, and again, if you look at the documentation that's circulated for the meeting tonight, it specifically and in writing says that any redevelopment would require re-provision of the library facility on the site. So, again, some of these issues are raised but are just not valid. There have not been changes to sites other than through the agreed process by councillors. Officers do not make or have not made any delegated decisions on this. And indeed, we are, as I say, the reason that we've put the amendment forward is precisely so that the further changes can be made by us as councillors before we go out to public consultation. I think that covers pretty much all of the points that were made. I don't think we need a vote, Chairman, on the second amendment. I would urge that we go straight to a vote on the first amendment and then on the motion whether or not the amendment is passed.
Right, thank you. If the second amendment you're referring to is Councillor Ranger's amendment, if you don't accept it, it's not an amendment. I'm being advised. Sorry, Councillor King, you've already spoken.
I've not had the answer to my question, Chair.
Councillor Bedford, you've summed up. You don't have to answer everybody's questions in summing up. Can you give Councillor King a written response after the meeting?
I'm happy to talk to him outside the meeting. I apologise, I didn't even hear his comment, but I'm sure we can deal with that outside the meeting, yes, Chairman.
If you could, please. Thank you.
I believe that
everybody else, if you put your hand up, you've spoken. We're now moving to a vote. It's obviously not going to be passed by general assent, so we'll go to a yes/no. We'll go to a yes/no abstain vote.
I'm sorry to be lost. So we're not voting on my amendment whether we'd like.
It's been made clear. It's been made very clear. It was up to Councillor Bedford whether or not he accepted it. He made it very clear, Councillor Ranger, he does not accept it. That's been dealt with. Thank you. So we're now going to move to a vote. First of all, on the amendment, that's Councillor Bedford's amendment. If you're in favour of it, vote yes. If you're not, vote no, or you can abstain. So, first of all, those in favour of the amendment, please put your hand up. Keep your hand up while Sarah counts the votes. Thank you. Councillor Hiscox, we're not sure which way you're voting or not voting. Thank you. Those against the amendment, please raise your hand. Thank you. And those abstaining, please raise your hand. Thank you. On the amendment, that was 28 votes for the amendment and 5 abstentions. Thank you. Now we'll move to the substantive recommendation. Those in favour of the substantive recommendation, voting yes for that, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those against, please raise your hands. And those abstaining, please raise your hands. Thank you. The result was 27 for the recommendation and 6 against. Thank you very much. Sorry, abstentions. My apology. That's passed. Thank you. Thank you. Could somebody please bring Councillor Hayward back? Thank you. Just wait for members of the public to leave and then we'll continue. Okay, thank you very much. Carry on, item 11. Recommendations of the service committees. There are 2 separate recommendations. We'll take them each in turn, same system, proposer, seconder, questions and a vote. So do I have a proposer for the first recommendation?
I would like to propose all of these items in number 11 en bloc.
Every item in number 11 in one block. And is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? So if there are no questions, is this passed by, both of these passed by general assent?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item number 12 is the minutes of the 23rd of February 2021 full council. Have any amendments been received, Sarah?
Through you, Chair, no amendments have been received. The ones that anything that we were picked up when we were consulting on them, but we haven't received any since their publication.
Okay, if the council is happy for me to sign the minutes, I'll do so. Thank you. Okay, I'll be signing those before the end of the meeting. Thank you. Item number 13, Chairman's announcements. There was only one function I attended in person during the whole of last year, which was a memorial service for Prince Philip the day after his funeral, and it was at St Albans Cathedral. It was very nice, it was as well. I attended an attestation ceremony for new police officers remotely and recorded a video and sent that in. The only other thing I have to announce is that my charity for this year will be the Scouts. I've attended the last 2 AGMs of Hertfordshire Scouts and they've been absolutely brilliant. I've been really blown away by the amount of stuff they do for young people. If you think of a 10-year-old now has spent 10% of their life in lockdown, it's really important that we get kids out and enjoying themselves, socialising together as and when they're allowed to. The Scouts are fully available to all children in our district. We have Scouts huts and Guides huts and groups throughout the district. I hope you'll join with me in supporting those, and I will be contacting you in future to ask you to help. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Item 14, appointment of leader of the council. Starts item 14 all the way through to item 24. Sorry. My apologies, sorry. We've got a number of items here that we're going to try and pass in one go to save us all the agony of going through each one individually. They start at item 14, appointment of leader of the council, and go all the way through on the agenda to item 24. Sorry. Yeah, okay, my apologies. Sorry, so we'll start at item 14 and try and go all the way through to item 24 and try and do these all in block. And first of all, can we... I've spoken to leaders of each group and asked if they were happy for us to go through these by general assent, and I think that officers have done the same. So for all these items, 14 to 24, are all of the nominations previously shown on the attachment, are they all agreed?
I don't mean to be sulky about this, but I'd quite like item 13 to be done as well, on the basis that that's the appointment of me.
Item 14. 14 has
Sorry.
to be, you can't do it by general assent, you have to.
I'm told if everybody agrees, that's what we can do.
in legal terms, as it's a legal position, the appointment of the leader of council has to be formally proposed and seconded, and as part of the legal process, and that's the way it's done in other authorities. Can I just formally propose Sarah Nelms is duly appointed the leader of the council?
Right, thank you. So all items 14 to 24, can somebody formally propose all of them in one block?
In that case, Mr. Chairman, I will formally oppose all of them in one block, even though I am named in item 15.
And I will formally second.
Thank you.
Want to vote against me separately? Absolutely fine.
Councillor Hiscox?
Chair, but there are no names against the deputy and lead member role. Is it on the other sheet? Right, okay.
I think you'll find them there, Paula. Okay, if you agree them all on block, I am reliably informed by our wonderful Chief Executive that we have then dealt with all of those items. Are they all agreed? Thank you. Right, item 25, appointment of other to other council bodies. Sorry, item 25, appointment to other council bodies. Right. Again, lead members have been spoken to. So for items 25 to 28, we are the proposal is that we record votes for all of them in one go in our political blocks. The leaders having expressed the way that their groups will vote. So, Alex Hayward, are you happy for us to vote on block for these?
Chairman, to be perfectly honest, I'm a little bit frustrated. I stepped out of the meeting, I've come back, my computer's gone offline, I can't access the agenda's not up on the screen. It really isn't very good for democracy, this situation in this chamber. No reflection on you personally, Mr. Chairman, just a little moan.
Moan heard and acknowledged. Can you get back online? Let's see if we can get some help for you, Alex, before we move on.
Sarah's presence has fixed it.
It's
Oh,
a
I always go this
miracle.
way, yeah. Don't worry, I'll find it this way.
Okay, so what we're seeing, if is possible, is if for items 25 to 28, we can take them all as block votes on the assumption that the political groups will vote the same way, their same way, not the same as the other groups, on each of those items. So instead of going through each one individually, if everybody's going to vote the same way on each item, we could then take items 25 to 28 in one block. Is everybody happy with that? If not, we'll take them individually. Councillor Reid.
Sorry, can I just confirm, with this ones we have our independent group who are only standing in some of those positions,
In one of,
but
yeah,
not
yeah.
all of them. Therefore, there are times where the political groups may not be voting the same way on each one, and therefore I think there is a requirement to go through each, as not all parties are standing in.
So which one are you referring to?
Youth Champion.
Might be quicker just to go through the list.
That's 29. I said up to 28.
But even so, I think they are standing for the Youth Council and some other positions that they may not necessarily be
The
standing
Youth
for.
Council is item 29. I said up to item 28.
No, there is a difference between the Youth Champion and the Youth Council. The Youth Council falls under parts of 26. The Youth Champion is in that separate 29.
I'm giving up the will to live here, so we'll do them one by one.
Gives our arms exercise too.
Okay, so we'll go through these one by one. The first one, I think, is line 45, Three Rivers Community Safety Partnership. There were two nominations from the Lib Dems, Councillor Seaborn, and from the Conservatives, Councillor Morris. So those in favour of Councillor Seaborn, please raise your hand. Those in favour of Councillor Morris, please raise your hands. And those abstaining, please raise your hands.
In terms of counting for each of these, since there's a fairly known number of us over this side, can we just assume that our hands will all go up at the same time and nobody has to actually count us?
That might.
Just make it a bit quicker.
That might.
Thank you. As long as we promise that none of us will leave the room.
Yeah, okay. Save some of the misery. Sorry for the delay. That was 24, 10 against, and 3 abstentions. Okay. On to line 46, LSP. Those in favour of the it's a local strategic partnership. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nominations, which is Councillor Nels and Bedford. Those in favour of the Conservative nominations, which are Councillors Hiscox and Hudson. Thank you. And those abstaining. That was 20, 10 and 3 in favour of the Lib Dem nominations. Thank you.
Are you enjoying this, Chairman?
Yeah. Right, next one, line 47, Police and Crime Commissioner Community Safety Board. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, which is Councillor Roger Seaborn, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, which is Councillor David Raw, please raise your hand.
11.
Thank you. And those abstaining, please raise your hands. Sorry, Councillor Hudson, we're not sure which way you voted. Take it you voted for Councillor David Raw. Thank you. Thank you. That was 19 for the Conservative, for the Lib Dem nomination, 11 for the Conservative and 3 abstentions. Thank you. On to the next one. Chair and Vice Chair of Trolleywood and Sarrett LSP. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nominations, which are Councillors Trevitt and Coroya, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those in favour of the Conservative nominations, which are Councillors Wall and Reid, please raise your hands. And those abstaining, please raise your hands. Thank you. That again is a 19, 11, 3 with in favour of the Lib Dem nominations. Thank you. Now on to Chair and Vice Chair of the Brickmansworth Local Area Forum. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nominations, please raise your hands. Those in favour of the Conservative nominations, please raise your hand. Thank you. And those abstaining, please raise your hands. That was 20 votes for the Lib Dem nominations, 11 for Conservatives and 2 abstentions. Thank you. Now for the Chair of Watford Rural Local Area Forum. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, Andrew Scarth, please raise your hands.
19.
Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, Shanti Morrow, please raise your hand.
11.
Thank you. And those abstaining, please raise your hands. Councillor Michaels, are you voting?
No, Chairman.
So that's 19-11-3 in favour of the Conservative nomination. Thank you. Now the vote in favour of for the Chiltern Conservation Board, and if you're looking at your spreadsheet, that is line 73. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, please raise your hand. Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand.
11.
Thank you. And those abstaining, please raise your hand. That's 20-11-2 in favour of the Lib Dem nomination. Thank you. Next is line 74 of the spreadsheet. Denham Aerodrome Consultative Committee. Those in favour of Councillor Carroya, the Lib Dem nomination, please raise your hand.
19.
Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, Councillor Reid, please raise your hand. Thank you. And those abstaining, please raise your hand. Okay, so that's 19-11-3 in favour of the Lib Dem nomination. Thank you. Line 78 of the spreadsheet. Herts County Council Health Scrutiny Committee. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, please raise your hand. Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand. And those abstaining, please raise your hand. 19-11-3 again, thank you. It's in favour of the Lib Dem nomination. Now, line 79 of your spreadsheet. Three Rivers Museum Trust. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, please raise your hand.
19.
Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand.
11.
Thank you. And those abstaining, please raise your hand. Again, 19-11-3 in favour of the Lib Dem nomination. We'll try and contain the excitement. That's line 80 of the spreadsheet. Brickmansworth Golf Club. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, please raise your hand.
19.
Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand.
11.
And those who wish to abstain, please raise your hand.
3.
So again, that's 19-11-3 in favour of the Lib Dem nomination. Thank you. Right, line 82 of the spreadsheet. New Agreement Traffic Management Act 2004, committee. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, please raise your hand. Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand. And those abstaining, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you. That's 19-11-3 again. In favour of the Lib Dem nominee. Line 84 of your spreadsheet, Hertfordshire Police and Crime Scrutiny Panel. Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand. Sorry, my apology. Yours in favour. A Freudian slip by me. Shows how joyous and this is here. Yeah, shows someone else was listening while I wasn't paying attention. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, sorry, please raise your hand.
19.
Those in favour of this time the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand.
11.
And those abstaining, please raise your hand.
3.
19-11-3 in favour of the Lib Dem nomination. Line 85 of the spreadsheet. Family Support District Partnership. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, please raise your hand.
19.
Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand.
11.
And And those who wish to abstain, please raise your hand. Okay, it's 19-11-3 in favour of the Lib Dem nomination. Line 86 of the spreadsheet. Hertfordshire Armed Forces Covenant. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, please raise your hand.
19.
Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand.
11.
And those who wish to abstain, please raise your hand.
3.
That's 19-11-3 in favour of the Lib Dem nomination. Line 87 of the spreadsheet.
Chair, if I may. Chair?
You may.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There's been a misprint there. It should be lead member of Councillor Williams with Councillor Tankard as the substitute for the Hearts Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership at 87.
Sorry, Phil, could you say that again?
Yeah. It should be Councillor Williams with Councillor Tankard as a substitute.
Okay, thank you. Right, so
Pleasure.
For line 87, Hearts Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership, those in favour, not as shown on the spreadsheet, but just advised to us, Councillor Williams as the Lib Dem nominee with Councillor Tankard as a substitute, and Councillor Rena Ranger. So those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, which is Councillor Williams, please raise your hand.
Can Margaret Hoffman indicate which way she's voting?
Councillor Hoffman, are you voting?
Yeah, 20, sorry.
Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand.
11.
And those abstaining, please raise your hand.
2. 19-11-2.
That was 19-11-2 in favour. 20-11-2 in favour of the Lib Dem. There we go again. The Lib Dem nomination, which is Councillor Phil Williams. Thank you very much. Right, line 91 of the spreadsheet.
No, you've got 91 on the note. Brilliant. You've got appointment.
Sorry, there's a line missing from our notes. Line 90 on the spreadsheet. Pensioners Champion. Those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, please raise your hand.
19.
Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise your hand.
11.
And those abstaining, please raise your hand.
3.
That's 19-11-3 in favour of the Lib Dem nomination. Thank you. Right, line 91, the Young Persons Champion. There are 3 nominations here. John Tankard for the Lib Dems, Kieran Reid for the Conservatives, and Alex Michaels for Independent. So those in favour of the Lib Dem nomination, John Tankard, please raise your hands.
19.
Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, Kieran Reid, please raise your hand.
10.
And those in favour of the Independent nomination, Alex Michaels, please raise your hand.
2. And the abstentions.
Those abstaining, please raise your hand.
19, 10. So 19.
Thank you. That was 19 for John Tankard, 10 for Kieran Reid, 2 for Alex Michelson, 2 abstentions. Thank you. Line 92 of the spreadsheet, member training champion. If you are in favour of the Conservative nomination, please raise. Lib Dem nomination, please raise your hand. Sarah Bedford. Okay, 19. Those in favour of the Conservative nomination, David Coleman, please raise your hand. 11. And those abstaining, please raise your hand. 19. That's 19, 11, 3 in favour of the Lib Dem nomination. Thank you. Lastly, and I know you would all want to stay here for far longer doing this, item 31 on the agenda, independent panel on members' allowances, and we just need to agree by general assent on this item. Are we all agreed?
Sorry, Chair, didn't hear much of that.
Yep. Okay, agreed, right. Sorry, Councillor Clements, item 31 on the agenda, independent panel on members' allowances. Are you there? Can we agree this by general assent? Right, agreed. Thank you very much indeed. And that is it for another year. Thank you.
Chair.
Chair, for planning on Thursday, could we cancel the trumpet player next door, please?
Sorry?
For planning on Thursday, can we cancel the trumpet player next door?
Well, maybe depends how the meeting's going, doesn't it? Maybe want to bring him in and.